Inventory, what's our outside source?
Our statement.
Good. Jane says the inventory on the shelves. Would you agree? If your books, if the inventory on the shelf adds up to $50,000, what should your books say are on the shelves? $50,000, right? So the outside source is the actual physical inventory. Now that's real easy to say, not as easy to do, okay? We're going to talk for a few minutes about this because it's going to involve a process we call reconciliations, okay? Now, reconciliations has about 43 syllables in it, okay? And so it makes people nervous when they hear that word. If you look in the classifieds, in the Help Wanted section, oftentimes under the accountant section, they will say, must perform reconciliations. People call me and say, can I do that? Yeah, you can. They just think, all those syllables, can I really do that? Reconciliation is simply comparing two things and understanding any variances between those two things. We do it all the time in life. And when you get out on the job, if they've got a reconciliation for you to perform, they're going to sit down and say, just compare this item to this item. It's going to make all the sense in the world. And you're going to think, why did I even worry about that? And you're going to see that tonight, as we go through this. And let's start with account number 230, Honda Cycle Inventory. What's the balance in Honda Cycle Inventory?
$16,366.94.
Okay, $16,366.94. Now, if I was to tell you, Sherilyn, that balance involves, or that what I did was I went out onto the lot, because this is for Honda motorcycles, right? I went out on the lot and I counted them, and there are 7 Honda motorcycles out there. Would that be enough to tell you that that balance is right?
No.
It would only be enough if every motorcycle costs the same amount, and you can multiply 7 times that amount and check it. But certainly we know that's not the case in motorcycles, right? Motorcycles will vary significantly in price depending upon the model and the options and all those other things. So what do? We assign a stock number to every motorcycle out there on the lot, right? And so if we go out there and we add up we list the 7 stock numbers, and then we go into our office and we look at the stock card for those 7 items, and we add up the cost. What if it doesn't add up to $16,366.94? You got a problem. Yeah, there's a variance, okay? Now remember, that usually means something's wrong in our sales journal, doesn't it? It means, or something's wrong in our purchase journal. Something is wrong here, and we've got to figure out what it is. Because if it's something wrong in our sales journal, how many accounts might be wrong? 12, 20, 15, whatever it took, yeah, a whole bunch of accounts. And so one discrepancy in one account, particularly in inventory, could be significant. Well, in order to know that, we need to know which motorcycles our books say that we have, okay? All we know in the general ledger is what? The total, just the total of the general ledger, that's all we know. We need to know now which motorcycles they are. So turn to page 1.48, and I want you to take that out of the book and put it to the side here. Don't rip it out. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Now 1.48, notice that it says up at the top, City Cycle Reconciliation, okay? And it has several columns down there. First of all, there is nothing sacred about this format, okay? All this format contains, you can get these at an office supply store. They're called ledger sheets or columnar pads or whatever. And this one's got several columns. The first column is for the stock number. Then it has a column for the name or item that you're describing, then a beginning balance, okay? Now, the total cost in the beginning balance, or for the beginning balance for these 4 motorcycles, was how much? Now, can we check to see if that $11,000 number is correct? Where can we check that? Previous month what? Inventory in the general ledger, right? Okay, so let's turn back to the general ledger that you've been working on to account number 230 and check to see if that number is correct. We know that the $11,000 is correct because that's what our general ledger said as of the end of December, excuse me. Okay, so beginning January, we know that we had 4 motorcycles, stock numbers 1001 through 1004, and that the total of the costs added up to $11,000 and some odd dollars. Now, during the month, what happened in January? We bought some and we sold some, okay? And we bought, how much did we buy? $33,855.28, I think was the number, right? And we sold how much? $28,500 approximately is what we sold. So that resulted in a balance of $16,366, correct? Okay. Now, in order to know which motorcycles make up that $16,366, we need to list the ones we bought, and we're going to do that in the new purchases column, and we're going to list in the units sold column, we're going to list those that we sold, and that's going to result in a balance, or the right side. Now, let's do that together. Where are we going to find out which ones we bought? From the Purchases Journal, which is on pages 1.6 and 1.7. So turn to the Purchases Journal, if you would. On the left-hand side, in the left-hand column, let's list the stock numbers of the new Hondas that we bought. Okay, what was the first new Honda? What stock number did we assign the first new Honda?
1005.
1005, okay? And what's the stock number did we assign to the last Honda we purchased? 1016, right? Okay, so go ahead down in the stock number column, list 1005, 1006, 1007. This is on your reconciliation sheet. List the stock numbers of each of those that you bought. Okay? So list that. There's a column that says number on your reconciliation form. Just list 1005, 1006, 1007, down to 1016. Okay, now, once we have the stock numbers listed, we're going to list the original cost of each of those stock numbers in the new purchases column. Okay? So what was the cost of stock number 1005 according to our purchase journal? $3,066.22. So put that in the line beside stock number 1005 in the column that says new purchases. 1006. How much did 1006 cost us? $32,1044. So put that cost in. Go ahead now and list the cost of each of those 12 new Hondas that we purchased down in the new purchases column. Then total that column and make sure it adds up to $33,855.28. Now that you've listed the cost of those 12 motorcycles, the next step is to list the cost of the motorcycles that you sold. Now, where are we going to find that information at? The new sales journal, which I think is just the next page over, if you'll just turn it over. And there you're going to find 2 columns. Now, the 2 columns you need are the stock number column, which is just to the side of the name of the customer. And then about 3 or 4 or 5 columns to the right, you'll find where we credited account 230 for the cost. Okay? And it says Honda costs in the title of that column. So those are the 2 columns we need. Now, Bill Anderson, we sold a new Honda to. What was the stock number of the Honda that we sold to Bill Anderson? 1004, correct? Do you see that? What was the cost of stock number 1004 according to the journal? So we credited account number 230 for $2301.59, correct? Okay, so now in the reconciliation form, we're going to find stock number 1004. We're going to track across that row until we get to the column that says units sold, and there we're going to write 2301.59. Do you understand that process? Okay, once we do that, we go back to our journal, we go down the column until we find the next new Honda that was sold. What was the unit number of the next new Honda? 1003. And so we track across in the journal, find out how much we took out of account 230, which was how much? $3118.98. We put that up into the reconciliation on the line that's assigned to stock number 1003. Okay? Do you follow that? Okay, now the next new Honda was a couple lines down. So we have to skip 3 lines and go down to this John Doe sale, correct? And what stock number was John Doe? 1002. Again, we track across. We find out how much we took out of account 230. We put that in the line for 1002. Now, I will give you a little hint. If you can convince the salespeople to sell these new Hondas in numerical sequence, okay, it would make your life a lot easier. But the fact is, I haven't gotten a salesman to go along with me on this yet. They're going to bounce around all over the place. And so just be aware that you might be moving down on the sheet and up on the sheet and back and forth and so forth. But I want you to list now all of the sales associated with this month, the cost of those motorcycles that were sold, okay? We're working right down that column. And at the end of the process, how much will that column total? $28,502.42, and that will tell you you've put them all in. So go ahead and complete that process. Okay, once we have listed now all the units purchased, all the units sold, the last step is to then determine which ones are still in inventory. Okay, now stock number 1001. We had it at the beginning of the month. Have we sold it yet? Not according to our books, right? So that means it should stay. And how much is stock number 1001? 2,362. So we're going to carry that amount across to the right-hand column and add it in as one of the final balanced items, okay? Now stock numbers 1002, 1003, and 1004, according to our books, have been sold, correct? So we're going to put 0 for stock number 1002, 3, and 4 to show that they no longer are in the books. The next line down is just a total line. We can skip that. But the next line after that, 1005, do we still have 1005? According to our books, we do. So we're going to carry 3,066.22 into that final column for the books, and so on and so on. So I'd like you to go ahead and complete that listing the cost of each of those items, then total up that column. And how much should it equal when it's done? 16,366.94, right? That should be. If it doesn't add up to that, then something's wrong. So go ahead through that process and then stop. Once we have added those original balances, or excuse me, the existing or ending balances up, and they come up to 16,366.94, that tells us which motorcycles our books say we should have on the front lot, right? Okay. So how many motorcycles should we have out there according to our books right now? 6. Okay. What did I tell you we had out there? 7. Do you remember? 7. Okay. We got a problem? Our books don't represent what's actually out there, do they? Okay? Now, why would that happen? Why would that be the case? Why would we have 7 out there and 6 on the books?
Lost the paperwork.
Lost the paperwork for a new one, a purchase. We brought one in last month in January, and no one told us about it. You think that happens?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stock number 1017 is out there right now, okay? That could be one issue. Or it could be something else. What else could have happened? You think our customers could return one? What if Bill Anderson took stock number 1004 home and then, for one reason or another, decided he just wasn't going to keep it? So he brings it back to the dealer and says, would you take it back? And the dealer was willing to take it back. The dealer never told us about it, okay? Now remember, Bill Anderson's account impacted a lot of different accounts, didn't it? Bill Anderson's sale. So there's a whole bunch of accounts that are wrong. By finding that out, we can make our books more accurate in several different places, okay? So one account will impact at least one or more other accounts, okay? Well, once we have identified which motorcycles our books say we have, we're going to go take that list and we're going to go back out to the motorcycles out on the front lot, and we're going to compare that list of stock numbers against the list of stock numbers that our books say, and that's where we're going to find out where there's an error, and we're going to fix it, okay? So that's how inventory goes. Now, we have dealt with, so far, two types of inventory methods. We have dealt with specific identification. Do you remember that inventory method? That's what we did right here with motorcycles, wasn't it? Now, normally, unless it's very pricey inventory, we don't use specific identification. We might use specs. Do you remember specs? Starting inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory equals cost of sales. And that means in order to use that method, someone has to take a physical account of inventory, don't they? Okay? And so that, and if they tell us what the physical account of inventory is, we know what the book should say, correct? But there was a third method of taking inventory and a third method of calculating cost of goods sold. Does anybody remember what that third method is? Percentage of sales, wasn't it? Okay? Now, percentage of sales, why do we have a percentage of sales method? It's easier than counting, so it might be, and if they don't give us an ending inventory, we have no other mode or method of calculating cost of goods sold than to use a percentage of sales. So if we say, well, our sales are $10,000, our costs are 50% of sales, what do we estimate our cost to be? $5,000, right? Okay, and we're going to make an entry crediting inventory and debiting cost of sales for $5,000. Do you remember that discussion earlier on? Okay, that's the percentage of sales method. However, in this audit process, remember, we're trying to compare assets and liabilities to what? To an outside source. With the motorcycles, we had the actual motorcycle sitting out there to compare it to. With specs, we actually have an ending inventory that someone's handed us. However, where we're dealing with percentage of sales, we don't have a number to compare it to, okay? So what's our outside source? Well, in some cases, we don't have one. And this is an example of where we don't have an outside source. Does that mean that if we don't have an outside source, we just throw caution to the wind? We say, hey, if you're not going to take inventory for me, and it's wrong, it's your problem. Should we do that? It's probably not a good way to do it, okay? We want the accuracy as much as we can get. But if they're not going to give us an outside source, we're going to use our best judgment, okay? Now, what I would expect to do if I were using a percentage of sales system is I would graph out the ending inventory each month, okay, and its value. And so I would plot it on a chart someplace here showing January and February and March and April. I would plot that, and I would look at what's happening to inventory. Now, what would, in most cases, you expect happen to inventory over a period of time? It's going to stay pretty constant, isn't it? I mean, if you go into a grocery store on January 1st in the morning, what do the shelves look like? They're full, right? What if you go into that same grocery store on February 1st? What do the shelves look like? They're full. March 1st, full. So you think, you know, they're just going to stay pretty level, isn't it? They're going to keep it pretty full. And so I expect inventory to do somewhat that process, okay? And if it's doing that, and that's what I expect, how do I feel about the inventory numbers? Reasonably accurate, or reasonably confident that they're correct, right? Okay? If they're wrong, they might be wrong by just a little bit, but I feel confident that they're probably at least in the ballpark, correct? Okay? But what if I see inventory doing this? Now, if that's happening, that's saying that what? They have more inventory each month. They're growing their inventory, right? What would I expect to see in a visual, if I actually went out and I saw the shelves and so forth, what would I expect to see if that's what my books say are happening? That's right, stuff stacked in the aisles. Yeah, or else, you know, rooms, warehouses being, you know, stacked higher and higher. I would expect to see that. And if I actually see that, I'd feel confident that probably my numbers are correct. Okay? What if I don't see that? Something's wrong. Now, who's wrong? Is it the inventory that's stacked up in the shelves, or is it my books? It's my books. Okay? The inventory doesn't lie. That's right. It's there, and that's what my books need to represent, is what the inventory is actually on the shelves. And so if this be the case, when I expect this, and when my visual inspection says this, then I need to make an entry. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to find out why there's that difference. Okay? I need to understand why my numbers are different than the realistic picture. Okay, so I go into the owner or the boss and I say, hey, my books say one thing, it appears something else. Are you hiding inventory from me? Okay, and if the answer is no, then I ask them, have you changed your markup? Okay, because what's the percentage based on that I use to calculate the cost of sales percentage? Markup. And might they change markup? Give you an excellent example. One of my clients sold tires. I saw this exact situation over 3 or 4 months. And it takes at least 3 months to identify a trend like this. Over a 3-4 month period, I saw this growing, yet his inventory wasn't. So I asked him, have you changed your markup? And he said, yes. A discount tire store moved in about a mile away, so I had to change my percentage to avoid losing all my customers. Okay? And so, when was it good to find that out? The sooner, the better, right? Because had this continued to happen like this, and had I just assumed it was right, because, I never make errors, right? Okay? So I assumed it was right, what's going to continue to happen? The difference is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, at the end of the year, when he does do a physical count of his inventories, and my books say that he's got $150,000 worth of inventory, and he comes and says he's got $20,000 worth of inventory, am I going to look silly? Yeah. In the meantime, might he have made different decisions based on the information I was giving him than what he should have? Okay? So the sooner I identify this, the better, and the more accurate my books are. What I did then was he didn't do a physical count for me. I just made one entry, lowering it back down to what it was at the beginning of the year, and then I adjusted markup, or adjusted my percentage, cost of sales percentage for future months. And at the end of the year, I came out pretty close at that point. So the sooner you identify that, the better. And you identify it through just looking for reasonability. Is it reasonable? Okay? And if you don't have an outside source, that's the only thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is just ignore it, okay? So if it's a significant account. Now, if it's an immaterial account, it's not a big issue, okay?